All right, so here we are. Thank you for coming out to the Zodiac Lounge. And we're going to be talking about this 8th sign of the Zodiac, Scorpio. And one of the things to know for those who are new to the Zodiac Lounge is that even though I'm talking about a particular sign, that doesn't mean it doesn't have anything to do with you. Why? Because how many signs do you have within you? All of them. The question is, in what proportion do you have them in you? So Scorpio becomes one particular factor by which you can understand yourself. Because one thing to know about the zodiac is that the zodiac is the articulation, so to speak, of God becoming God during the course of the year. Meaning the manifestation of the divine as we see it through the sun's journey through all of our quote-unquote 12 months and 12 signs. So it's a way of understanding that annually as we think about it, that this is the journey of I am becoming. Through ourselves, what we call all the other things around us. And we look at the particular planets in their particular signs at any given time as a measure, as a way of understanding what's happening in the moment. So Scorpio reflects a particular moment in time. So that's what I want to talk to you about. Now, when we last met, I was talking about Libra. And I said that Libra was going in terms of that I guess, rationalization, that thought process between what we call this and what we call that. Some might say equivocating, but the other way you might say is where you're trying to rationalize and understand from a perspective that includes proportionality, kind of figuring out the right angle, configuration of things. So we have the right configuration of things and understanding of something from Libra, and we come to Scorpio. So what does Scorpio become about? It's not so much about figuring out the right proportion of things, but as much as dealing with the raw conviction, the passion that not just something could be right, but something is right. That you can actually plumb and go into the depths and feel like you can have or achieve some level of certainty. Now, that's a very strong statement because that's almost like the opposite as you might understand Libra. Libra is kind of like, okay, let's see how it goes. And Scorpio is like, it's this. It has this intensity. Now, I have to tell you something. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I am born in the very last degree of Scorpio. So I am a Scorpion. And one of the words, and you can hear the Scorpion coming out, because the passion is coming through, that I hate about Scorpio is intensity. But at the same time, it is true, isn't it? So what is that intensity about when we talk about Scorpio, this idea? Well, I'm going to take a step back. And the planet that's associated with Scorpio in the traditional sense is Mars. Now, in the modern sense, it's Pluto. We'll save that for another time. But in the traditional sense, it's Mars. And Mars also rules another sign, Aries. So Aries is about how we kind of project the sense of identity in the external world. So as God is reputed to have said, I am, we have that in Aries. The first sense of being, the expression of identity, I am. So we can say, as the first fire sign and the first sign of the zodiac, Aries brings the fire. Now, the other Mars sign, Scorpio, is different. They are born and made in fire. So Aries brings the fire, but Scorpio internalizes and both is made in the furnace. Just like in the Bible, we have the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? And so who were placed by the king Nebuchadnezzar, the Persian king, for their violations, and they were put into fire and survived, right? And not only didn't, survive, but weren't burned at all. Scorpio is that idea. Now, that sounds really lofty and nice, but on some level. But on another level, like, motherfucker, you're saying that Scorpio is in fire? On some level, yes. Now, let me go deeper into that. Scorpio has a lot of symbols associated with it. So among them, and when I say a lot of symbols, let me go over them. There's the scorpion, the actual arachnid, right? Which is like the 8-legged creature that's related to the spider, under which it's named. Then it also has a couple other animals associated with it. Some of you probably know them. You know the phoenix, right? Do you know the wolf? The wolf is also associated with Scorpio. Then there's the snake. Did you know the snake is associated with it? Right? And then I just mentioned the phoenix. There's also the dove associated with Scorpio. But the one I want to talk to you about that is also applicable to Scorpio is the eagle. Now, when you go to some churches, you will see 4 animals, and some synagogues even, associated with particular creatures. So there is the eagle, which relates to the fixed sign Scorpio. There's the lion, which relates to Leo. I expected you to come in on that, but Aquarius. Aquarius is associated with the angel or the human being. And then there's one more. The bull. And that's, yeah, right. I was waiting for the Taurus to weigh in on that. It is Taurus. Now, there's something to know about the eagle. What many people don't know, because people talk about it, and it's one of the symbols for the United States, is also another symbol associated with the United States, right? It's the snake too, like don't tread on me, right? But, and that's interesting because there's 2 Scorpio symbols, and there is a belief that there is another U.S. chart, which is not just the chart for 1776, but it's a Scorpio one. But look, I'm digressing. But the key thing to know about Scorpio and the eagle is it was commonly believed, and this now has been debunked as a myth, but it's still important here. It was commonly believed that the eagle was the only creature that could directly look into sunlight and not go blind. That was the traditional ancient belief that the eagle could penetrate into the heart of the sun. So what's that have to do with Scorpio, and why is that important to understand about Scorpio? What it really does highlight is that Scorpio uses the energy of being in the fire to pierce through the heart of the sun in order to really deal with not just the element of truth and not with just the element of passion, but with the element of conviction to make change, to be a catalyst for change. The reason why Scorpio or the scorpion is associated with the actual sign is, what do scorpions do when they're attacked? They sting. So when they sting, they put a catalytic change in someone's body that can lead to death, right? They are also very unique creatures in that they're one of the few creatures that when attacked and provoked and they see no way out, they will sting themselves to death. When you can go beyond that symbol, which we're talking about, into the next one, eagle, then this is where you're compelled to soar, where you're compelled to go above the fire, to go above the circumstances that can destroy you, and soar. But this is what Scorpio has the hardest time with, because Scorpio wants to believe that they can be extinguished, and they get too much caught up in the idea, rather than facing what death is, which is ultimately a hoax. They come to believe it as the single truth and are willing to sting themselves rather than soar. Now, this has really profound application to what we're talking about right now. And I'm going to speak predominantly to people of color, and I'm talking about African Americans, but this is something that's applicable to all of us. Now, one thing to know is that the first indentured Africans to arrive in this country, we believe, came sometime at the end of August in 1619. At least 3 different astrologers, including myself, have rectified that chart for those first indentured servants who came here as having Scorpio rising. Now, those who don't know astrology, you should know that you have 3 at least important signs. You have the sun sign, you have the moon sign, and the rising sign. And the rising sign is a sign that's coming above the horizon when you're born. And what's important about that is that that particular rising sign directs the course of how you navigate through your life. The sun gives the intention. The moon gives you the vehicle and the way by which you embody that intention. But when we're talking about the rising sign, this means this is where you have to have the clarity how you're going to move forth in the world. And when we're talking about a Scorpio rising, we're talking about how one faces death, extinction, extinguishment. And this is not just true for African Americans or anyone who has a Scorpio rising, but this is how we deal with it in terms of our own lives. And so when you come to believe that your life is just tied up in this mortal coil, in the fact that your life is only about what happens on this plane, then everything and anything by virtue of that fear can extinguish you. Now, I'm not talking about heaven. I don't know anything about heaven. I don't know anything about hell. I'm talking about the fact that this life, when we talk about Aries and we talk about I am, Scorpio is the deeper aspect of that, where you're made through the fire, you're made through the circumstances that could extinguish you. But even in that attempt to extinguish you, there's something that cannot be extinguished. This is whatever you want to define it in terms of your soul, but I'd rather give it something else more beautiful, and that's your love. Your love cannot be extinguished by hate. Because as long as you've given your love to invest in those you love, your family, your friends, your passion, the conviction to be able to change the world, where you raise your tail and allow it to become your wings, then you can take flight and become a catalyst for something else in this world. Because when you allow your fear, when you allow other things to dictate who you can be, how you can be, where you can be, then you have become a slave. You have become a slave to your own fears. You have become a slave to whatever tries to enslave you. And this can happen. This is the darker aspect of Scorpio, where they start becoming paranoid and thinking about, well, what's going to try to get me? Or the government's doing this, whatever. Stop worrying about what everyone else is doing. What are you going to do? Who are you going to be? This is the path of the eagle. And this is where you can be at the point where you can look at the sun and not have your eyes burned out. And you can recognize that you can soar and you can go toward that inner dimension, that other place of consciousness, which some call divine, but really it's rooted in your love, in your passion, in this quote-unquote thing that people call your intensity. And so let me tell you what intensity really is about. Intensity is when you know that you have something inside that is not just shown in the exterior or on the outside. It's a dynamic tension between what's within and what is visible or said to be seen without. This is what Scorpio can do. And when Scorpio has tapped into that fire, because it's come from circumstances that try to destroy it, that try to alter it, that try to crush it, that try to put it out. But when you tap into that fire and it starts burning in your heart as love, as passion, as energy, then you can dip into your heart and pull out an ember, a flame. And then you can take that flame, not just soar it and put it toward the sun. You actually can stand on a mountaintop and prepare yourself to launch that into the heavens. And at that point that you take that ember in your heart and you dip it in and you put it up toward the heavens and you put it on your arrow and you put it into your bow, like Arjuna, as it says in the Gita. At that point, Scorpio is no longer Scorpio and has transcended into something else that we will talk about next time as Sagittarius. Thank you.